Right, well, I'm not quite sure what went there. Hopefully, you can hear me, you can see me. The stream suddenly cut off. It seems to be live at the moment. If somebody just give me a nod and say they can hear me, that would be great. Right, so what have I got for you in today's show? Well, quite a lot of content as usual. The first piece of news in today's show, which is 11's number 367 at Sunday 17th September, we have the news that Wales has gone to a blanket 20 mile per hour limit in urban areas, so watch out for that. That's changed right across Wales. Motorcycles are actually the worst offenders for speeding on motorways and in 30 limits. That's new data which has appeared online. Ducati and Lamborghini have demoed a motorcycle car connectivity system and talk about how it could possibly, hopefully, improve safety for motorcyclists. We have... I've lost my broadband. Well this morning. Right, okay, sorry. I don't know what happened to the microphone there. I didn't turn it off. It seemed to turn itself off. I'm having a bit of a problem this morning, so let's hope it works well from now on. I'll just run through what's in today's show very briefly again for those who missed it. Residential streets across Wales now a blanket 20, so watch out for that. Motorcycles are actually the worst offenders in 30 limits and on motorways for speeding. Ducati and Lamborghini will be demoing or have demoed a motorcycle car connectivity system which alerts each to the other's presence. Safety checks find almost 1 in 2 riders in Malaysia are breaking law. We'll ask if a half-fed Hornet from Honda is on the way, and we'll also have a look at the rather disappointing Z E1 and Ninja E1, which are due now to arrive next month from Kawasaki. We'll also take a quick look at the rather nicer, I think, Moto Guzzi V Stone Corsa. And then finally, the in-depth item, 10 years on, what did a cartoon series of powered two-wheeler safety videos achieve? I'll ask that as we take a look back at the video itself, and that's the first part of a two-parter, so stay to the end of the show and hopefully next week you can follow up with the second half as well. So, right, hopefully all going well at the moment. Aaron says I'm back. Good. Right, okay, so, alright, so on with the first piece of news. Well, as you probably know, I managed to sneak a few days' holiday into the Isle of Wight. Unfortunately, I booked a car across, which was a big mistake because, of course, the weather was wonderful. I should have taken a motorcycle. If you've never been to the Isle of Wight, it is a fascinating little island. It's in some ways a microcosm of what the locals call North Island, the mainland. It has a lot of widely varied landscapes within its few square miles, with some lovely biking roads, actually. So I did miss out on the newsletter last week, but that has now been published with all the links. So if you're not already a subscriber to the newsletter, that's the easiest way to get all the links to everything I write. Now, the weather in the first half of the month, as you probably noted, has been record-breaking. 7 days over 30 Celsius. That has never happened before this time of the year. The reason was a powerful Atlantic hurricane, Franklin. Though it never came anywhere near us, it did actually create something called an omega block, which I recall from my meteorology days. And this is basically a zone of high pressure which sits over the UK, and what it does is it loops the normal rainy weather away from us, and so it draws Saharan air up, and that's why it was so warm. Now it has cooled down to the mid-20s over the last couple of days. As I look outside the window, there is a bit of sun breaking through, but it is mostly cloudy, and it does look like it's the last day of our Indian summer. Now there is a severe weather warning out for Wales, the West Midlands and down across the southwest. Thunderstorms are expected to develop, so do watch out if you are planning to ride in those areas, and I think the rest of the country will probably get some rain at some point. Now Monday looks wet too. Next week seems to be the usual sunshine and showers kind of autumn weather, but further off there is a hint that October could see a return to fine dry weather, so that's the forecast for the next few days. Right, now let's have a look at the news for the week ahead. Now, what have we got for you? Well, as I said, the first piece of news is that the rollout of a default 20 mile per hour speed limit on most residential roads in Wales has already begun today. So remember, if you're out there, most roads across the country which were 30 are now automatically 20. Now the RAC has reminded people not to rely on sat-navs for the correct speed limit until you get a map upgrade which has got the right speed limits, and instead to follow road signs. Hopefully they have gone up and been unveiled today. Now it's said that there will be a period of familiarisation. Lee Waters, who is the Deputy Minister for Climate Change, he said that initially any motorist caught over 30 miles, over 20 miles per hour, but under 30 will receive advice from police rather than a ticket. But if you get caught at speeds of 30 or over, then expect that you will get ticketed. Now my advice, although there will be some local exceptions, the best thing to do is now to treat all built up areas as 20s, unless you can definitely see information that the speed limit is 30, rather than go into a built up area assuming it's 30 unless you see a 20 sign. So reverse your thinking on that, and that should keep you clear of trouble in those built up areas. Now unfortunately, the latest information from the speed compliance surveys that are done on at regular intervals across the UK. The 2022 data is now available, and what it shows is that motorcyclists are already particularly bad at adhering to the 30 limit, so hence the warning at the top of the show here. The data is based on what's called free flow speeds, and these are measured at sites where road conditions create free flowing traffic. So they exclude places where there are junctions, hills, sharp bends, speed cameras incidentally, or other traffic calming measures. For example, smart motorways are automatically excluded. Now here is the bad news. In 2 of the 3 free flow conditions they measure, motorcycles were the vehicle most likely to be speeding. Now just 45% of motorcycles, that's less than 1 in 2, actually complied with the speed limit on motorways, and only 44%, that's even less, on 30 mile per hour road, and that's lower than any other group of vehicles including cars. Now only on national speed limit single carriageways did HGVs and buses speed more frequently than motorcycles. That's because they have a slightly lower speed limit set on those roads. Now 28% of motorcycles were over the limit on these roads, compared with just 11% for cars. Now the percentage of motorcycles exceeding the speed limit by over 10 miles per hour on motorways was actually 17%, so that's almost 1 in 5 riders are over 10 miles per hour over the limit, and that again is higher than any other vehicle type. And on no speed limit, or national speed limit I should say, single carriageway roads, it was 1 in 10 riders over the speed limit by more than 10 miles per hour. More worrying really, it's the figures on 30 mile per hour roads, because 13% of riders exceeded the speed limit. That's roughly 1 in 8. by more than 10 miles an hour. Now that is a huge amount over that 30 limit. It might not seem very much, just 10 miles per hour extra, but in 30 it really makes a big difference, because as I have said in the past, exceeding the speed limit turns out to be a very significant factor indeed in fatal urban collisions, because of several factors. First of all, the driver is far more likely to misjudge the rider's speed of approach and make a turn in front of that rider, and because of the extra speed, the rider cannot get rid of much speed in the collision. As I've said before, if two bikes start side by side 40 miles per hour and 30 miles an hour, if the bike travelling at 30 just stops and avoids the collision, how fast do you think the bike travelling at 40 hits the car? Well, it's not 10 miles per hour. Because of the physics of speed, it's about 25 miles per hour, and so the result is a heavy impact, and those speeds often result in fatal crashes. Now generally, road users stuck to the speed limit slightly more than in 2021, and that's attributed to partly at least to the impact of COVID in 2021, when pandemic lockdowns were still partly in operation, people were working from home more, so there were lower traffic levels. Now in a broader context, vehicle speed compliance in 2022 was broadly similar to 2011 to 2019, which were not so affected. So if you are on a motorcycle, remember to keep your speed down in urban areas. It is a very good reason for it. And secondly, remember that Wales, the speed limit has changed. Now don't forget, if you have anything to say, any questions, any comments, do drop me a line. I do love to hear from you, and very happy to answer questions wherever I can. So we have a couple of comments. Aaron says, grumble, don't get me started on this. I presume you mean the 20 limits. It's ridiculously so when the city is empty. Yeah, but you know, drive to conditions. Yeah, I kind of agree, but the trouble is that a lot of people don't, and you are trying to balance a reasonable amount of mobility with a a sort of a improving safety generally. So I'm kind of in favour of blanket 20s across rural, not rural areas, across built-up areas, particularly in residential streets. That some people do blast up those because they think nothing will go wrong, and I don't agree with that at all. Right, and Aaron also says if you're travelling fast and traffic around you, you are asking for trouble. Absolutely agree with that. Right, so yeah, as I say, don't forget, drop me a line if you can. I'll try to answer during the show, as I have just demonstrated. If I can't, I will try to do it later. Now, Ducati and Lamborghini, they've put their heads together to demonstrate the effectiveness of the motorcycle car connectivity system. This is something I was talking about some weeks ago as the possible ultimate for motorcycle safety, and they were showing off their collaboration at the Connected Motorcycle Consortium's demo event at the Lausitzring racetrack, which I think is in Austria. Now, car makers have been researching and developing vehicle-to-vehicle communications technologies for quite some years now, and motorcycles have significantly lagged behind. Now, it's as recently as 2016, the Connected Motorcycle Consortium was actually founded, and it is an international association of leading motorcycle manufacturers, and it aims to have motorcycles included in this future of connected mobility by adding information sent by motorcycles, which the consortium points out have very different needs and dynamics to cars, so that this can be standardized in the future to improve the safety of motorcyclists. Now, the initial work involved an accurate, what they call an accurate analysis of the most dangerous accidents between motorbikes and cars, both in terms of frequency and the seriousness of harm suffered by motorcyclists. That shouldn't have actually taken them too long, frankly. There's been loads and loads of research over the years on that. Anyway, taking that as a starting point, they then looked at where connectivity could help, and they then graded the where they wanted to intervene by introducing some methodologies capable of reducing collisions in specific circumstances. Now, it's said that a crucial aspect of the research is to reduce the system's reaction times as much as possible, because, as they point out, if you want to limit the risk of a collision, you have to alert at least one of the two parties involved nice and early. Now, the joint demonstration actually looked at 3 different manoeuvres, so let's have a quick look at what they looked at, if I can get the picture to move forward. There it is. So let's just zoom in on that, give you a slightly better view of what you're looking at. So this is the intersection maneuver assist that they were investigating. Basically what they did was they recreated an intersection with reduced visibility, where the motorcycle is approaching on what was described as a busy road. Meanwhile, the car is arriving at the same time from a secondary road. Now, from the driver's perspective, the view of the motorcycle is totally obscured. Now, what happens next is that a warning signal is displayed on the car dash, alerting the motorist to the arrival of the motorcycle, advising the driver approaching the intersection to emerge only with extreme caution. Now, the second scenario that looked at was a different one. They looked at an alert aimed at the motorcyclist, and in this case the do not pass warning. This operates where a motorcycle is in a line of traffic and wants to overtake a large vehicle, for example, which conceals another vehicle ahead of it which is turning, but without the rider being able to see it. This is a very, very common crash where, filtering it happens, but also it happens on faster roads at speed. Riders don't stop to think why a vehicle in front might be slowing down. They look at it as an opportunity to pass, and then they discover something in front of it is turning. So in this case, the motorcyclist gets their warning as soon as the system detects a car and a motorcycle have both turned on their indicators. So that is the sort of screen that you'll see on the bike. It's an add-on one at the moment to the existing TFT display, but presumably it would be integrated. The third scenario they looked at is left turn assist, and this is confusing because a big chunk of the world actually drives on the opposite side of the road from Italy, and in short, it's the maneuver where the oncoming car is on the opposite path to the motorcycle and the car wants to turn across the rider's path. So in this case, again, as soon as the driver turns on the indicator, they will get this warning sign that a motorcycle is around, and hopefully they'll look again and see it, if they haven't already. Now, one obvious question about these do not pass warning and the left turn assist system is that both appear to be reliant, at least at the moment, on the indicators being used. What happens if the rider or driver doesn't signal? But beyond that, the biggest problem with this technology is that it won't be available to older vehicle operators unless it's somehow retrofitted. Now, in the initial stages of the rollout, relatively few vehicles will be equipped with this vehicle-to-vehicle transmission, and there'll be relatively few alerts, so you'll still have to keep your eyes open. It'll only be special, the latest vehicles that will talk to each other. But what happens 10 years or so down the line, when most vehicles are now equipped with these warning systems, but there'll still be a significant number around which aren't equipped? I don't yet see any answers to that one. So, right, okay. Oh, I've jumped ahead there. That wasn't what I wanted to talk about yet. Lahore, let's just turn that off for the moment. Police issued 1 million fines, more than 1 million fines to helmetless riders in 3 months. I mentioned that in the last show. But it seems like the Road Transport Department in Malaysia is also clamping down on riders via checks at roadblocks. Now, the special operation, as they call it, a rather unfortunate term given the events in Ukraine, the special operation on motorcycles will run from September the 1st, so it's been in action just over half a month so far, and it will run to September the 30th. Now, the Road Transport Department say they have so far inspected over 140,000 motorcycles up to Wednesday, September the 13th, and they've issued no less than 64,295 notices for various offences. That's a fairly astonishing 46% of all motorcyclists stopped and checked. Now, we tend to sort of assume in the UK that most riders, the vast majority of riders, will be fully compliant with all the laws. But it seems that in Malaysia, almost 25,000 of those 64,000 motorcycles stopped, so for 1 in 3. Had no insurance. Nearly 20,000 had no driving licence for a motorcycle, and 4,000 had run a traffic light. 3,000 motorcycles plus have been seized. Now, the main objective of this operation is said to create road safety awareness and reduce the number of deaths amongst motorcyclists. I'm not quite sure how issuing tickets creates road safety awareness. I suppose it might take some of the worst riders off the road. Who knows? Right. Okay, now do set a reminder. The show goes out on Wednesdays and Sundays. It's almost always live. Occasionally it's recorded, and even more rarely I have to cancel the show due to other events. But if you want to catch the shows, if you can't make them live, then the place to go is YouTube. And while you're over there, do check out my other videos, my 60-second science and 60-second safety. I've just put a brand new 60-second science article up over there, a short video looking at the terms roll, lean and turn, and explaining how they are different but how they work together to help you understand motorcycle cornering. Right, okay, so head over there. Couple of comments, or another one from Aaron. He says, "Read the overtaking crash. The good old offensive riding. Cars don't slow for no reason usually. I do think it is more tech to go wrong." Well, yes, I tend to. I have that fear. Anything that's exposed on a motorcycle to the outside world is never going to fare well, I fear. So, anyway, moving on to the next section of the show, let's have a look at some info about bikes. Now, is a half-fed Hornet on the way? The US mag Cycle World, they say they've uncovered some patent drawings which they claim is a sign that a sportier CBR 750R could be on the way, based of course on the newish 750 Hornet Twin. Now, I had a look at what they were talking about. Here's the patent drawing that they've found, but to me that bike looks more like an SS version of the Hornet, just like the old faired Hornet, the one with the half fairing. I've actually got one of those myself. The Hornet, the 600 Hornet, you probably recall, appeared first as a naked, and then they stuck a half fairing on it. The bars were all left alone, riding position completely unchanged, basically just a half fairing with a headlight in it. So it had the same ergonomics as the naked, but it did have a lot more wind protection. That made it a much more practical all-weather machine, in my opinion. Now, Honda have recently developed the concept of the shared platform to its sort of ultimate, really. This is reusing the basic frame and the motor for one machine as a basis for a whole series of others. And they did that first of all, of course, with the NC 700 750 platform, and then they did it with the CB 500 too. They've recently used the 1100cc Africa twin engine as the basis for the NT 1100, which is said to be a capable tourer, and also what I think is the rather unattractive Hawk 11 Cafe Racer, which, as far as I know, still hasn't appeared in the UK. Do correct me on that if I'm wrong. Now, the Hornet itself has already spawned the Transalp Adventure bike based on this same twin cylinder engine and steel chassis. So there's no reason not to expect new machines, and including possibly that full-fared middleweight sports bike, which could be called the CBR 750R. Yamaha have already done this. They brought out their YZF R7, and it does appear that the R version of the Suzuki 800 is also on the way. But unless Honda drop their existing CBR 650R, it's pretty hard to see room for both of these bikes in the model range, particularly given that Kawasaki have actually managed to squeeze Euro 5 emission compliance out of their much sportier ZX6R. It gives you that sort of super sport performance which a lot of people seem to have been missing. Now my money is on this being the half-fared CB750S Roadster, and that's exactly what the picture there seems to suggest. And frankly, it would be a re-entry to the market for a kind of machine which has been almost completely abandoned by manufacturers in their rush to build adventure bikes. So it may just win Honda some extra sales before everyone else follows suit with those motorcycles. Now, moving on swiftly from Honda to Kawasaki. Kawasaki have announced that their electric motorcycles, the Naked Z E1 and the Fared Ninja E1, will be arriving in the UK as early as next month, October. Now there is a little conflicting information about just how much performance they've got. Some sources suggest that the motor is 11 kilowatt, which would be 14.6 or so horsepower, which would be bang on the 125 limit. But most say that the brushless electric motor has a claimed peak power of just 9 kilowatts, so that's a tad over 12 horsepower, and that this is even only available via an e-boost button, and that would give a boost to a maximum speed of just over 60 miles an hour for short bursts, for example when overtaking. Now in prolonged use, the motor is being claimed to actually only put out a rather disappointing 5 kilowatts, 6.7 horsepower, and that would in effect limit top speed to around 45 miles per hour. Now that would be okay for city commuting, but it does mean that the bikes themselves won't match a 125 ICE engined machine on faster roads. Now the prototype, which was shown at the Milan Motorcycle Show as the EV project, had a claimed peak power of 20 kilowatts, 27 horsepower, and a continuous output of 10 kilowatts, which is 13 horsepower, and that would have given the motorcycle cruising speed of around 60 miles per hour and a short burst top speed of about 85. But it does appear that these machines have been downrated to fit an A1 learner license category. Another letdown for the bikes is actually the twin lithium-ion batteries. Now each offer just 1.5 kilowatt hours of stored charge, so that's a total of 3, and that's a way behind the sort of similar spec bikes from Zero, which are 7.2 kilowatt hours if I remember correctly. The battery packs, they weigh 12 kilograms each. They can either be charged in situ or they can be removed. The prototype was said to have an estimated range of 62 miles or 100 kilometers. Right now there are no range figures that I have seen available for these 3 kilowatt hour batteries, but from my guesswork, from their restricted capability, I would guess no more than 30 miles or 50 km is likely. MCN actually got between 35 and 75 miles from a scooter with a 5.6 kilowatt hour battery, so that's almost twice as big. So I think the range is going to be very, very disappointing indeed. Now the small batteries have presumably been chosen to keep weight and cost down. The E1 tips the scales at a fairly lightweight 135 kilograms, which is a tad under 300 pounds, and the Ninja E1 is 5 kilograms heavier, which is 5 bags of sugar. So it's not clear though whether that weight is with or without the batteries. Now also not mentioned yet is price. Now given that very restricted performance, it would be a bit of a shocker if Kawasaki don't try to keep it in line with their existing 125s, which are just over £4,000. So all in all, summing up, I have to say that the look of the bikes is quite nice, but the actual performance and the likely range, I suspect, is going to be a real disappointment to people. And if they are more expensive than the ICE bikes already in the range, I worry very much that this effort by Kawasaki to be first on the block with a working e-bike will only confirm what a lot of already sceptical riders think about e-motorcycles, that they are underpowered and expensive. Right, okay. As always, always interested in what you have to say about these stories. I think that Kawasaki may have made a mistake launching these, but hey ho, we will find out in a month or two when we see them flying off the shelves and I'm proved totally wrong. Another bike which I do like the look of, I have to be honest here, is the Moto Guzzi Stone Corsa. So let's have a look at that. It's a brand new bike. It was launched at their Mandello del Lario open house event, and it's the V7 tarted up, basically. Now, it's said to be a testament to Moto Guzzi's commitment to innovation, style, and the passionate community of riders who continue to fill the Eagle brand's legacy. So, well, lots of words there to explain what the bike's all about. Well, it's based around the existing V7 platform, which is of course the 853 90-degree 2-valve air-cooled V-twin engine. What's new for this bike? So, well, the obvious features are the new handlebar fairing and the revised saddle. The headlight cowl itself is undoubtedly a nod in the general direction of the iconic, I think anyway, Mark I Le Mans. Unfortunately, I think they've made a bit of a boo-boo with the rear end of the machine. Take a look at the seat there. Now, I would have said that the backward slope of that seat is more likely to lead a passenger parting company with it than staying firmly attached. Moto Guzzi say the seat mimics a monoposto style whilst discreetly offering passenger comfort, showcasing its versatile design. Well, I don't think sitting on that will be particularly comfortable if you're sliding off it. I don't think I'd be too happy asking someone to perch on that. Now, from a practical point of view, I have to say, if I were looking to purchase this machine, I think that I would probably be looking to see if I could order it either with a standard seat from the other V7s, or at least a retrofit one. It probably can be done. I think it's a remarkably duff piece of styling from the practical point of view. And the very odd thing about all this is, if we go back to the original photo I looked at just a moment ago, if you look at the rear of the machine in this photo, what you can see is that it actually comes with an optional seat cowl anyway. So if you aren't planning to take a passenger, you can just stick the seat cowl on and you get that sort of solo race seat effect, whilst you could still conceal the a proper passenger seat under there if you needed to. They did that with my XBR back in way when, and the my FZ 750 also had a seat cowl. What else do you get? Well, you get a bunch of what I think are rather pointless styling features. I do think the bike is a nice looker, but I'm not really too convinced that it needs a black anodized aluminium fuel cap or black mirrors, or wait for it, a special edition badge on the handlebar riser. But the rest of the machine, as far as I can see, is standard V7. And now, the V7 did get a whole bunch of updates for 2021. You get a much improved motor, 65 horsepower, 47.8 kilowatts. That comes in at 6,800 RPM, so a nice low revving engine. There is a restricted A2 version available, by the way. Torque, a fairly monster 73 Newton meters, 53.8 pound-feet. That comes in at 5,000 RPM, and it's delivered through a 6-speed gearbox, although frankly you probably won't need it very often because more than 80% of the torque is available at just 3,000 RPM, so you should be able to find that motor is a nice easy riding engine. Now the motor itself, Euro 5 compliant. The tank holds a fairly whopping, by today's standards, 21 litres, just over 4.5 gallons. That includes 4 litres in reserve, and with a claimed fuel consumption of around 57 mpg, the bike should be good for 200 miles between top-ups. Just a matter of whether or not rider and passenger can cope with the seat. Now there is a single Brembo disc up front. The front wheel is an 18-inch with a skinny 190 tyre on it. The rear is a 17-inch 150/70. You've got a twin piston Brembo working on that as well. The wheels, as you can see, are alloy. The suspension is basic. I think it's non-adjustable right way up, 40mm forks, and preload adjustable twin rear shocks. So fueled up, it weighs in at 218 kilograms, which is around 460 pounds. So it's not light, but it's not particularly heavy either. Seat height is a relatively low 780 millimeters, 30.7 inches. So the bike should be pretty manageable by smaller riders. Price, well, for the Corsa edition that you're looking at right here, £9,050 is what it will empty your wallet to the tune of, and that's compared with 8,200 for the existing V7 Stone base model. And of course you can add accessories if you want to. It's available to order now, but whilst I actually do rather like this sort of Le Mans look, I do think over £800 is a lot to pay for a small fairing and a fairly impractical looking seat. Okay, Guzzi seat is a padded luggage rack, says Aaron. Yeah, okay, I tend to agree with you on that one. Right, okay, so on to the final section of today's show, the in-depth section. Now, 10 years ago, a compilation series of short cartoon films were launched here in the UK as part of a rider safety campaign that went by the name of Twist. That's Twist spelt with a capital I in the middle. Now, I wondered if it was some kind of mistype, but apparently not. It was printed like that in their press release, and to be honest, that immediately annoyed me. I never quite understand why people think that scattergunning capitals into the middle of a word is going to somehow make it more catchy. Anyway, let's have a quick look at what we are talking about. Here is a still that I captured from the video itself, which we'll take a look at in a moment. So the cartoon video was entitled Twist and Ride, a film about epic motorbike and scooter crashes. The cartoon featured exaggerated caricatures of different rider profiles, but the common theme was that they all came to a sticky end. Now, it was produced for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Road Safety Partnership, and it was launched predictably enough in what was claimed to be a high number of power two-wheeler casualties in the partnership area, and that's what was reported in a county policy document which preceded it in 2011. It said, quote, "Motorcyclists in Cambridgeshire account for a disproportionately high number of the overall total of serious injuries and deaths, despite there being far fewer motorcycles and cars on the road." Well, you should note two things there. The first is that the document doesn't claim that Cambridgeshire actually stands out amongst other counties across the UK as having more crashes, bike crashes. So what they mean is that motorcyclists are more likely to be a casualty in a crash compared with the occupants of other vehicles within their area. Now, second, the document also uses the very regular metric of KSI, killed and seriously injured, and not crashes. Now, the killed and seriously injured count is always going to be higher than for other vehicles, simply because of the vulnerability of motorcyclists when they do have a collision of some sort. So it would be really useful, arguably more valid, if we started with a comparison which counted crashes by distance ridden rather than the KSI figure, if we want to achieve any kind of valid comparison between cars and bikes. I'll also make a third point. In the previous 3 decades to the production of this cartoon series, powered two-wheeler casualties had been steadily declining in terms of actual casualties per miles travelled. Now, I did have a graph of that, which I was going to show you, but for some reason I can't find it this morning, so I'll try and tack it on next week. But basically what this indicated was that since the early 80s, the numbers of riders being killed or seriously injured on the UK's roads had fallen consistently right through to the early 2010s. In the last 10 or 12 years, that has flattened out, but the fact is, at the time this video was being created, motorcycling had been getting safer for 30 odd years. Now, soon after its launch, Matt Stanton, he was the lead road safety officer for Cambridgeshire County Council, he said at the time the campaign courted controversy when it was first launched, but we got important support from the Peterborough Motorcycle Action Group when developing it. The animation, he said, is intended to spark debate among riders, but the important thing is to raise awareness and get riders on our courses. The fact that the video now appears to have gone viral is an added bonus to help spread the word about the need to take training and stay one step ahead of other road users. That aspect of getting people to take training is the key point, really, because the outcome that they want from this video is to make people think, maybe my riding's not as good as I thought it was. Maybe there is something I can learn from a rider training course. But my fear at the time of the video was that, however tongue-in-cheek it might have been, by depicting what the campaign described as, quote, a series of hapless riders making outrageous manoeuvres with inevitable consequences, the way that the video actually works to portray bikers is so clearly detached from reality that it both alienates the riders watching it and fails to educate in any way, shape or form at the same time. Now, the high-risk lunatic fringe get all the publicity, it's true, but they don't make up the bulk of crash stats. Now, as I've explained before, the majority of motorcycle crashes actually happen to perfectly ordinary riders in the middle of perfectly ordinary manoeuvres. Yes, so yes, the average rider may not realise their own risk, but they do know that they simply don't pull these, quote, outrageous manoeuvres, unquote, in the video. And so the warnings about the crash types tucked away in the video simply get lost in translation. Riders simply don't believe that the video applies to them. Have a watch for yourself. I've got the video here. It is 2.5 minutes long, so it is quite a long one. Just stay. Right, okay, I'll leave that there. Volume was a bit loud on that, so I hope it didn't deafen you too much. There is another bit of that, so if you do want to go and watch the entire video, you can find it on YouTube. The channel is still up and running, so head over there. As I say, there's a little bit more of that still to come. Now, I'll be coming back to this twist campaign next week when I talk about the safety campaign's own reaction to the motorcycle community's response to this video. Don't miss it, because their perspective, their take on what was said to them was interesting. And in my opinion, their second set of videos, which they created with the feedback from the motorcycle community, was actually, it just made things even worse. So that is the twist campaign part 1. I'll be coming back to that next week. So Aaron says, totally agree, doesn't apply to me because I'm a safe rider. He does recognise a CBR 600 F2. Yeah, I wonder if it was CBR 1000, but anyway, whatever. It did look rather familiar. So that is it for today. Before I go though, I would just want to give a quick shout out to a few people. We have our coffee subscribers, who I do want to thank, are, where's my list gone? Oh, here it is. Yeah, Mad Cockney, Johan, Living Martial Arts, Nigel, Claire and Christine, they have all supported me over the last few days. So if you do want to head over to coffee.com and find my page over there, which is coffee.com survival skills, do have a look. You'll find plenty of articles to read, which don't cost you a penny. But if you want to subscribe, or even just be a one-off supporter, you open up masses and masses of Facebook posts dating back to 2014. So that is it for today. Do pop over there and have a look if you haven't already. Stay tuned for part 2 of this in-depth look at the twist videos, and I'll feed you, of course, all the latest news, gossip and information about new bikes at the same time. So once again, thank you very much indeed for looking in, always appreciated. Great to see you all over here, and if you are out on the road today, do watch out for those storms across the western part of Wales and the UK. Doesn't look too bad here at the moment, but do keep an eye on the forecast for the next few days. So once again, thank you very much indeed. I'm Kevin Williams. This has been Elevenses, and hopefully I will see you on Wednesday. Thank you for looking in.